The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Tuesday. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. As we welcome you in on the stream, check us out, Hail Varsity YouTube. Also, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Give that a follow. We'll give our shout-outs happening in the stream. That is coming up shortly, our starting five, and then some. A lot of folks coming off the bench that just miss out on that top five. It's all right. We treat the stream conversation, the chat, the live interactive chat with Hail Varsity YouTube, much like Nebraska, we'll treat the defense, and that's rotating with waves of defenders. So numbers to get in along the Hail Varsity Radio Network, 489-1240, 489-1240, or 800-825-5865. You want to give us a shout, can email Chris at hailvarsity.com. A defensive day. We hear from Coach Tody White, Mr. Tody, Rob Dvoracek, the linebacker coach, a handful of players, Prince William and Yellen. You have Elijah Judy, James Williams that were at the podium. So some commentary from those folks. In hour one, Mitch Sherman from The Athletic will unleash the fury. We'll talk to Mitch so far going into week 3 with Big Red Camp. In hour 2, some offensive line perspective. Jeremiah Sirles, our favorite Husker NFL offensive lineman. Sirles kicks off hour 2. And then Mr. Matt Schick of ESPN, ESPNU, SiriusXM, and the vaunted Schick and Nick podcast. They are doing a live pod coming up Monday at 6. I don't know how many seats are available, but get there, Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. I believe it's the bigger non-Gretna location just next to Costco and the Embassy Suites, kind of our home base on Friday road shows.
Which is referring to the Papillion location.
The Papillion.
Or La Vista.
La Vista, yes. The La Vista location.
As Lincolnites, I struggle to differentiate Papillion and La Vista.
It's a great area.
Well, I mean, their high schools, even Papillion, La Vista. I'm not, and this is no discredit to them. I'm just saying, like, they're kind of in the same spot, yeah?
Well, no, it's La Vista.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, so get to La Vista.
You're having none of that.
Get to La Vista next Monday at 6 to enjoy the festivities with the Schick and Nick pod, of course, a product of Hurrdat Sports. So check all that out. We'll dive in here shortly. Elijah, you're a little frightened. You thought you were seeing some sort of poltergeist activity in the restroom upstairs here in our radio building in the studio. You walk in, and I'll take kind of the strobe light effect versus no light because, well, for a while we didn't have any light in the men's restroom post-storm a couple of Wednesdays ago. And then when power did get back on, the light was just tapping out. It was taking 5. It was 5 o'clock somewhere. So you go do your business. You either trust yourself or it was the iPhone light. You sat on the counter and you hope it bounced off the right way and you weren't peeing in the corner.
Hoping Big Tech was not watching your camera at that moment in time.
What? How did that get posted? Didn't even mean to. So long and short, you walk in and it's the old Studio 54. Am I hallucinating or is this light broken?
Yeah. All I'll say is if you're prone to seizures, find a different place to drop a deuce besides our bathroom. Like, you got some issues. You're not going to enjoy our bathroom. That light is just flashing and obnoxious, and I'm pretty sure those are the things they'd
prone to seizures. Don't go here.
Yeah, don't find a way to break in. We keep our doors locked for a reason, and that's the main reason.
For your safety.
Yeah, for your safety.
For your safety. There's not enough Elijah Herbel homemade garage-made candles in the world to walk into that restroom some days.
After you're done.
No, I'm a non-work guy. I don't go on road games.
Really?
Really. Unless it's like break in case of emergency.
What's stopping you? You might as well take
no light.
Oh, that's fair, but like if you're on the clock, you might as well take a little 10 to 15 minute break that doesn't need to be approved.
Well, this is how long. This is true love. There's several things that give me joy in the morning. one of which is seeing just how pissed off the missus can get. Did the alarm go off too many times? Did I not shut the closet door or the bathroom door tight enough to prevent any light from peeking through whatsoever? Or did you just forget to turn the fan on? And the waft, sorry, getting juvenile here, but I can't quote her book of quotes and reaction to all the time she's been woken up in the morning, but it is hilarious. I will laugh to myself driving to work. It is quite childish, but it is my joy. It is my entertainment. And that's one of the reasons.
Dylan chimes in here and says, "This is the content that keeps the people coming back." You are in fact listening to the Hail Varsity Radio show,
or running and hiding. And the folks in the streaming on the radio, if you've not turned it, are saying, "Shut up and get to football."
I promise we will get to football.
Yes, we will. 489-1240 number to get in. But a defensive day. Aaron Rodgers sat down with Boomer in New York on Ian O'Connell's biography. We'll get there. Possibly, but excited to have Matt Schick with us here next hour, Sirles next hour, Mitch Sherman in 10 minutes. So every year when it comes to fall camp, you've got some risers, and not anybody you want to peg as fallers, but Matt Rhule and Nebraska are all about continuing and not apologizing for recruiting talent. They're going to go and try and bring in the next, right? Either groom somebody that can step in or can fill in, or by the time you're gone, your replacement's there, you pay it forward, and you just plug and play. That is the dream, right? That is probably an unattainable dream for so many college football programs now, but you have options, right? I mean, what's your sustainability like? How long can you stay great? Can you have a 7+ year run like Texas and Vince Young and Colt McCoy? Can you have a 7-year run like Clemson had? They're still good. They're still ranked. They're still winning 9 or 10 ball games. They're just not kings of the ACC as much anymore. For a long time, Nebraska, decades, had their run. The Buffs had their run in the 90s. So what's your sustainability like? And part of that formula is going out and getting the Vincent Shavers of the world you think can be great. And by the time your 5th or 6th year senior linebacker imparts some wisdom to him, that dude's ready to play a couple of years for you after key level contributions. That is a name today that's been asked about, that you've been hearing about. Kid out of Miami, a linebacker that is uber talented, that his mind and maturity level of loving football is right there to go along with some skills and traits. We'll get some comments there in a moment. But I want to start with James Williams. He was part of the players at the podium today. And Nebraska is I mean, you ever play pitch or you play poker? What's your hand look like? And your hand, are you loaded or are you bluffing? I don't think Nebraska needs to bluff with what they have on the defensive line and all the options they have on the defensive line. James Williams went into a little bit further detail with Coach Potroast and just the different ways the defensive line can get after a quarterback, and the different personalities, the different players and their skill sets.
You know, with how much depth we have in the room, I kind of see it as like Coach T. Knight has like 13 different pitches he can use, and I'm his cutter. You know, like Kai Wallen is his slider, like Sua is his. I'm sorry, I really don't know baseball that well. Ignore that.
So pretty good. different pitches, different options. What's the defensive line got? What's it built for on the offensive line? What's giving them problems? You can throw them different looks. Bull rush is nice. If you're Reggie White, you're going to win all the time. Not everybody can win a bull rush on 3rd and 8 all the time, and maybe it takes a little more finesse. Are you a speed demon off the edge? Is it your quickness in your bend, or is it your brute strength?
And more here from Williams.
But he has such a wide range of like what he can do with each one of us. It's kind of just dependent on the situation. So I think it'll still be more of a like pass first type look for me, but I can play the run. That's been
a off-season emphasis for James Williams, be 1, 2, and 3 down guy. It's nice to hear him talk about it a little bit. Princewell commented on a guy that is, making impressions on him, and that is Vincent Shavers. Shavers is a guy that was, a flip late from Miami. You've got him and Barney, both kids that you want to see do well to keep kids coming from South Florida. Nebraska did well in South Florida for a time to get him here. Not many of the South Florida kids have stayed. The key thing now is to get this talent from South Florida in Shavers, in Barney, get them indoctrinated, let them go eat, and then keep them around and have that word of mouth continue to trickle down to Miami or South Florida, that region, and keep bringing 3 to 5 kids or more back into Lincoln and go win with them.
I mean, look at the potential for Nebraska's hit rate this year is what we're hearing. I mean, we all saw Ja'Cory Barney flash in the spring game. That's a guy you can go down and sell to the Miami kids.
It's a wow guy.
Yeah, say, hey, look, we know Miami is known for its speed at the wideout position. Look, we found a guy, Speedy, from Miami. We brought him in, and look, he's getting snaps year 1. He's doing kick return. He's doing punt return. We're getting him passes
and he's
in the
earned
offense.
it.
And he's earned it. So are things you can go sell. On the defensive side of the ball, you can say, look, Vincent Shavers, this is the guy that you played against last year, 2 years ago. We put on such and such amount of muscle. We saw that he had the physical tools. I mean, he's a guy that loves contact. We saw that. We got him college ready as fast as we can. We put him into positions where he could succeed early in his college career. We've done it with guys in Miami. We want to do it with you. That's a selling point that you can bring back to these guys somewhere down the road.
Guys that are athletic and talented enough at age 18 to come in and contribute. Stage isn't too bright for them. Do you get them ready? Do you kind of meet them halfway? They come in with some goods, but do you meet them halfway and get them ready so they can go perform and thrive? Let's get into our starting 5. Justin in first. Justin, good to have you in the Tuesday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. And you grandpa is here. Brennan from the Black Hills. Good to have you in, Brennan. Thanks so much. Dylan is here. Jack is here. And Larry. Larry is in. So is Patrick. Coach Brandon Kool-Aid is here. Mudflap says, what up? Eat beef. Says, hello, everyone. Jimmy White. Uncle Jimmy, good to have you. And Uncle Jimmy says, still waiting for that sweet smell of herbal essence. KG is here.
We were talking about different kinds of smells to start the show.
Yeah, we went psycho there. KG with a glorious quote from Anchorman 2. We can't really share, but check it out in the stream, Hail Varsity YouTube. Eric is here. NASCAR Eric, good to have you. The real Matthew, along with the other Brian. James Williams, heck of an interview. Who knew? Other Brian, James Williams, doing some nice things. Jeff Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty, is here. 18 days, but who's counting? Anonymous says James Williams will be the first person to win the Lombardi Award without ever starting a game. Jeff is in. Jeff, good to have you. Rule of the Day is also in. Brent is here. So good to have all the folks. Hit like and, yes, follow with the Hail Varsity YouTube. Let's hear a little bit from Tony White, Mr. Tony. So far, so good. ? Cut 1. How's the D looking so far?
They're working their butts off. You know, we're throwing a lot of situations at them this week, especially. Coach has situations mapped out, different thoughts, and want to get that practice. And the great thing is, especially in those situations, he's pulling the guys up a lot and going over the philosophy of why we're doing certain things. So, the education on that part is there, and we need to continue that, not only on the grass and in the meetings, but some guys, you can see some guys starting to get comfortable in terms of their groove and their feel about playing. I think Deshaun Singleton, he's a guy you can see. We lost him last year early. And then it was just kind of making sure that his knee was okay, and taking a long process there. And then all of a sudden now you see him getting back in the groove and making plays and flying around, and so he's playing at a high level right now. Same thing with Marquise. With his knees and everything, you're monitoring his loads and stuff, but him running around, getting the feel, he's looking like last year's Marquise. And then, those interior guys, the linebackers, Javen, John, Giff in there in the middle too. I think all those guys are doing a nice job of running around, communicating well, playing fast. We got to continue to develop the guys, the next level of guys. Mario Buford's one. Dwight Boodle's out there making some plays. Sierra Wright's out there making some plays. That second group of DBs, we're trying to get them a lot of reps, a lot of situations, so they can advance their learning and throw them on the grass. And Coach did that today. So.
We'll hear a little more from Tody White as the hour progresses. Mitch Sherman on the way from the Athletic with Hail Varsity.
It's that time.
Psst. Hey, Mitch. Mitchie. We're looking for you, pal.
Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, talking Big Red.
Unleash the fury, Mitch.
Unleash the fury!
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Trevor is checked in the stream. The real Matthew. Chris is in as well. We'll get to more comments here. Mitch Sherman with us from The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. And check out his podcast, the Locked On Nebraska Pod. Catch that weekday mornings with Mitch. Mitch, how we doing? Good to see you earlier. Thanks for a few minutes.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Good to see you too.
So a lot to dive into with Nebraska and some of the players that were up front and defensively speaking. I heard from Coach Dvoracek and, of course, Tody White. And Mitch, faith level here. When we talk about Nebraska and depth, that's been a big talking point leading up to this season for Nebraska and Coach Rhule. And a lot of focus today on that second wave, that second unit of guys from Coach White, not only the other players and Coach Dvoracek. Do you feel good about what you're hearing about Nebraska's role guys and maybe beyond?
Yeah, it's a deep group for sure on the defensive side, and they hope to be that on the offensive side. But we saw it last year where Nebraska played 20-plus players in key parts of football games and just what it did to benefit the defense. And I think this year, the way that they're talking, they can be just as deep. Now, I mean, and maybe even deeper. Or I don't necessarily know that they're going to play a whole lot more players. It's that the second and even third unit players who get into the games are even more prepared and even more starter caliber. We heard from Elijah Judy today, who fits that description on the defensive line. I mean, Ty Robinson, Nash Hutmaker are the top guys for Nebraska in the middle of the defensive line, but Judy is improved, and you can see it in how he looks, improved over a year ago, more prepared to be a well-rounded player. A player like James Williams that Nebraska brought in for 4 games last year before essentially his body broke down and he wasn't able to do the things that he wanted to do, is a new version of himself, as he described it, at 250 pounds coming off of the edge. I think he's got the chance to be a surprise to really everyone outside of the state of Nebraska and even in the state of Nebraska. If you're not following the team on a day-by-day basis, you're probably not expecting big things from James Williams this year, but it might just happen. And there are players throughout that defense at the linebacker level and in the secondary also who are ready to go and be better second unit players than even what Nebraska saw last year when, as I said, it went pretty deep and didn't have a huge drop-off.
Mitch, what's the importance in your eyes of rotation on defense? Are we talking a defense that we might see somewhere between, 18 and 22 guys out there playing any given Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I think 18's on the low side, and 18's below what they did last year. Last year it was in the 20s for most games, and I mean, I'm talking about games that were close and went down to the final drive of the fourth quarter. There were they still played 22, 23 defensive players. I think it's going to be similar. One spot where they may not play as many, or at least going into the season, what it looks like is, I'd say, that inside linebacker position. Last year you had the experience factor with Luke Reimer and Nick Henrich, but both of those guys had injury histories, and there was a benefit for Nebraska to play Javen Wright, to play John Bullock in semi-starting roles in order to give Nick and Luke the opportunity to be fresh at the end of the season. And that just may not be the case this year. Maybe it will, but we heard Matt Rhule say on Saturday that he's happy if they have 3 players at those 2 positions. Maybe it'll be 4. Anything beyond that, I think, would be a surprise. You have to remember that that's kind of like the quarterback of the defense. So the one position on offense where you're just generally not going to rotate in normal situations is quarterback. And I think there's some benefit to having continuity throughout the game at the middle linebacker spot, or whatever it is the spot that's calling out the defensive plays. We heard some talk from Tony White and Rob Dvoracek today, too, about the defensive player who's on the headset. And they've tinkered with, having Isaac Gifford from the rover spot be that guy. But, like, the one that makes the most sense, the player where it's just easily or he's easily able to communicate to everyone around him, is to do it with the Mike linebacker. And, that's probably a position in an ideal situation where you don't rotate as much. So everywhere else on the defense, I think we'll see Nebraska rotate every bit as much as it did last year, if not even more, like on the defensive line. But maybe that inside linebacker is somewhere where they're just going to focus on having 3 players who are ready to go, and then they'll be ready to adjust if there's any kind of injury situations.
Mitch, on the flip side of this conversation, if the offense is better, if they're able to sustain drives more, turn the ball over less, especially in inopportune times, you could argue there's going to be less snaps to go around on the defensive side of the ball. So it would still mean something if they're rotating more. You might have fewer snaps to go around and more rotation, is what you're saying?
That's their plan. I think they would like to hold the ball quite a bit. I mean, if you have an explosive offense, then it can kind of work the other way, too, where you're scoring points, but you're putting your defense back out there on the field. So there's a balance that you have to strike between playing complementary football and also being explosive. I mean, Dylan Raiola has the potential to be an explosive piece at quarterback. I think they have wide receivers that they've added in the offseason and some guys that they brought back, like Jalen Lloyd, Malachi Coleman, Thomas Fidone, who are explosive pieces on the offensive side. So that's where the running game comes in, and the importance of moving the chains and the importance of being an effective team on third down. Yes, they want to be a team that plays complementary football, and the best case scenario for Nebraska is not to have the defense out on the field as much as it was last year. You bring up a good point. If there aren't as many reps to go around on the defensive side, do you end up playing as many players? I think they would. The answer they'd like to give is yes. You're going to play Ty Robinson, Nash Hupmaker up front in the somewhere in the range of like 40 to 45 snaps a game. I don't see the defensive numbers getting down that low. So players like Riley Van Poppel, like Vincent Jackson, like Elijah Judy are going to get in games, even if Nebraska's playing fewer defensive snaps.
Mitch Sherman's with us from The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Mitch, couple of names at linebacker I'd like your thoughts on. A lot of buzz about Vincent Shavers, talent out of Miami, his role and what he could do, and then Stephon Diggs as well.
Stephon Diggs?
Stephon Thompson, yeah.
Yes. Didn't you know that Diggs transfer? I'm kidding. Yes, Thompson.
That'd be a hell of a pickup.
Wrong Stephon. Strike 1, 2, and 3. We can all laugh. I'm embarrassed.
You're good. You're good, man. Okay, so your top three guys at inside linebacker, sorry, Schmidt, are going to be Bullock and Javen Wright, and then maybe Mekhi Bayor, who was like a starter last year, going between the jack position and one of the inside spots. And then you're looking at Shavers. And I think the thing to note with Shavers, and as we watch the first game and the second game, if he's getting out there on the field, it's because they feel like he brings something that the other ones don't. Like if Vincent Shavers is just a good player, but he basically does the same thing that Javen Wright does, just at a younger age, Wright's probably going to get the vast majority of those reps. And then you have to look at whether you want to play Vincent Shavers in more than 4 games. They're on record. Matt Rhule said it last Saturday that they think that Vincent Shavers is a guy who's going to play more than 4 games. So that tells me that he does some things. He brings a unique set of skills to that inside linebacker spot. And if he's on the field, it's because he's given them something they're not getting from the rest of their players. So, yeah, I think Shavers is probably going to slot in there as the 3rd or 4th guy. I don't know if he's ahead or behind where Bayor is right now. If he's ahead of him, then that tells you he's really come a long way in his 8 months in the program. And then beyond that, did you mention Vince Genatone? I mean, Vince Genatone, the guy from the Montana transfer out of North Platte, it probably takes an injury to get in. And I mean, the chances you're going to have an injury to one of your top 3 or 4 linebackers is probably fairly high, at least somebody who misses some time. I think that's where Genatone comes into the mix.
Mitch, why do you think it's taken us so long to discuss the position group, the inside linebackers, that they lost their top 2 guys last year? Really wasn't a talking point all off-season long. Mm-hmm. What are these linebackers going to be? Why do you think it's taken us so long to get to the linebackers?
Well, we didn't hear from Rob Dvoracek, all of camp until today. So we're kind of at the whim of the Nebraska media staff, that media relations staff that puts these coaches out to be interviewed. But, that's only part of it. Obviously, we're going to talk about the things that are important to the team and important to the defense. I think it's because everybody is comfortable with Javen Wright and with John Bullock. They both started games last year, even with Henrich and Reimer around and as veterans in the program. And Henrich and Reimer were the single-digit guys. They were like the players, if they had captains all season long, who would have been in contention for that, multi-year starters. But Wright and Bullock were also playing a ton of reps. So the fact that both of those guys are back, it's like having 2 starters back at those 2 positions when you lost 2 from a year ago.
Mitch, real quick here, about 90 seconds, Stefan Thompson. His role.
You brought up. Yeah.
his role.
Well, he's coming along, the Syracuse transfer. He's coming along in this defense. I think he was somebody who took some time to adjust. You look at on the offensive side, that was the storyline with Micah Mazuka. Micah Mazuka is the offensive lineman. Maurice Mazuka is the running back. They look nothing alike, by the way, but they are brothers and are both in line to play on the offensive side in some way or another. Micah, the offensive lineman, much more. Anyway, Thompson was a similar situation where there was an adjustment period for him to get into the defense and into the way that Nebraska plays defense, and he seems to be getting there. I mentioned Genatone. Thompson's probably right there or a notch above Genatone as somebody who's finding a way to work his himself into that rotation.
Mitch, we'll holler at you later on. Thanks for giving us a few minutes, and always appreciate your insight, man.
Okay, thanks a lot. Take care, guys.
There he is, Mitch Sherman with us from The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Check Mitch's workout again with the Locked On Nebraska podcast. That was awful. We're going to burn that tape. Diggs? No. Thompson, yes.
What do you see Stefan Thompson's role being? I don't know, catching passes from C.J. Stroud?
Yeah, for 6.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Big thanks to Mitch Sherman, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. If you missed Mitch or want to catch up again, the digital audio podcast portion, find those platforms and give us a show rating. Appreciate that. Hail Varsity YouTube, can check and subscribe there. It is free. Trevor says stamina and rotation are going to have these guys going after heads on blitz packages. Brett is in reporting for duty. Jeff is asking where the whereabouts of one Connor Clark is. Connor's doing Salt Dog baseball, but we may have to rope. I don't know that we'll have to get a hold of Connor's agent to schedule an appearance.
And unfortunately, Will's already got those Topgolf vouchers, so I'm not sure what other kind of payment we'd have for him.
Yeah, what are we going to be able to do to get a Connor Clark appearance?
I've been working on, I kind of want to get a Damon Barr appearance.
Nice, that's a blast.
For people, long-time listeners of Hail Varsity Radio, remember Damon, he's actually got a pretty popular YouTube channel now.
Really?
Where he runs a garden. He's got a garden in his backyard.
What's he growing in said garden?
Actual
Are there
vegetables.
lights? Okay, vegetables.
It's like zucchini and tomatoes.
All right.
A lot of good stuff.
A lot of tomato plant footage?
Yeah, and like he just recently did a deep dive of all the bugs in his garden.
Huh. It's not a greenhouse?
No.
Love you, Damon.
He is no longer living here. He's not living in Colorado. He's never lived in Colorado.
No, I'm just asking what he's growing.
The greenhouse in the basement.
Let's hear Tody White a little bit more from Mr. Tody. And the defense so far, this is something that this staff will continue to harp on, and that is tackling. And a little bit more from Tony White. Cut 4 here. Thoughts on the defense when it comes to the scrimmage?
I think the football moniker is that the defense is always hit early, right, because of offensive timing and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think we tackled very well the very first scrimmage. It was just first time. I get it, but just like Coach said, you want to see the things you practice and preach every day. You want to see it show up on the grass live. Get the coaches out there, get all the cameras out there, and let them play ball. And it didn't show up like it needed to. Not with the group that we have. So. That's been something that's bugging all of us, is that making sure that we stress the tackling. We want to be a great tackling team. And then again, it's the situations, just consistently having the guys think about what situation they're in and how they should react, so that way when it gets to those close games that, we come out on top.
So that mentality continues to be a work in progress. How about that cornerback spot opposite Tommy Hill? Candidates for that, how is it going?
Yeah, that thing is rotating every day. I think the whole secondary is rotating through there, getting a lot of guys, a lot of different spots, a lot of reps at different spots. Coach Butler's doing a really nice job of that. I mean, you got Dwight Boodle's out there, Sierra Wright's out there. I mean, Jeremiah's out there. Bly's been on the side and he's working his way back well. Amari Sanders is a guy who's really standing out amongst those young guys and getting a lot of reps at corner. I mean, it's really day by day, who's excelling, who's really performing and practicing. And like I said, John is rotating guys through there so we can see guys at different areas. We're putting a field safety at boundary, putting a corner at field safety, moving those guys around so we have some flexibility.
A little bit more with Tody White. We'll wrap up with Mr. Tony on that linebacker battle. Mitch did an excellent job of kind of laying out that race for the top 3 with maybe a 4th, but cut 7.
Still going through. You got John who can play, you got Budu who can play, and those guys, it's about holding them to the standard and making sure that they progress their leadership skills and stuff like that. But then you got that next group. You got Vincent Shavers, who's doing a great job running around. He's young, he's raw, but the guy's explosive and he's aggressive as all heck. We got to tone him down a lot of times in practice. You got Steph Thompson, who who is running around and starting to find his groove in there. You got Makai, who's like a starter. I mean, he's running around like a starter, can play all three positions in there. And then you got some guys who starting to stand out too. I mean, Jacob Bauer, he's running around and making plays, and he had a couple nice plays out there today. And then Gage Stanger, who's a guy who's been around and just slowly increased and improved and moved positions, and his strength is increasing, his body weight's increasing, and then now all that stuff is showing up, part of the process. So you got a good group in there that'll all rotate in there and play, and I think Rob's doing a great job of giving them the skills to help them go out there and perform.
We'll hear from linebacker coach Dvoracek in a moment, but you're seeing guys that were recruited that are getting developed. Kobe Bretz was mentioned as well as a guy that's kind of locking into that rover spot, and you just heard Coach White talk about a guy in Gage Stanger. We remember interviewing Gage at kind of his senior year media session with the Warren Academy. And this was a dude from Millard South that was just elite and is still really a talented football player. But he could be, one of those next wave of dudes that when it's his time come in and light it up because of not only switching positions, but his skill set, that hybrid ability to bring the thump, but also be athletic enough to do a lot of stuff in space.
I still have that interview somewhere deep in my Elijah Herbel archives.
Somewhere. How long ago was that? Like 4 years, 5 years?
Was that 21?
Might have been.
I think that was 21.
Let's hear from Rob Dvoracek. More on Vincent Shavers. We'll get to a comment here from Mr. Snitley in a moment on that Florida talent, but cut number 8 here. And the question to Coach Dvoracek was, when did you realize a guy like Vincent Shavers could be a young player that could help a defense now?
I think you look at the traits that he has. Obviously, he's, like I mentioned, he's really explosive. So when you have that, you got speed, explosiveness, he's powerful, he's quick. When you have those traits, obviously you got to add the actual football part to it too. And so I think that's where there's still a lot of growth. And so I think when you see those things and he loves the game of football, you're like, we could find a place for this guy when it's right.
Well, and he's, forcing a place at the table, sounds like.
But at a minimum, like what he lays out there, a guy that has the athletic traits and the aggressiveness to play football or is teaching how to play football, does that not feel like a guy that could be a special team standout? Really,
for sure.
Like, yeah, you can be a rotational piece, but you can really make a name for yourself on special teams and show these coaches, hey, you deserve more playing time.
Bayer flashed a year ago leading into the Colorado game, and then he came in and lit it up against the Buffs.
And to go back even further, I know this is a long time to go back, and I probably don't actually need to go back this far, but it's a name that comes to mind. Eric Martin in the Bo Pelini
caveman
was a guy that had those athletic traits, bit of an in-betweener between linebacker and defensive line, but he had the athletic traits, he had the aggressiveness, so you threw them out there on kickoff, on kick return, he's just going out there decapitating dudes, and lo and behold, he gets to the end of his career and he becomes a pretty solid rush end.
No, I mean, Kaz was like, dude, we're going to put some weight on you, bring you in off the edge, and Caveman had 8 or 9 sacks. His senior year was big.
It's what can we do with you while we wait for the football side of things to progress? And I think Shavers is going to be a guy that is going to be featured on the defense this year, but where can he stand out? Special teams.
Brian Snitley checks in, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty, with the South Florida guys poised to play early. Hopefully that keeps Nebraska relevant in that area, even with the losses of Evan Cooper and Phil Simpson. Both those guys were the big Florida connections, absolutely, Brian. But tape doesn't lie, and that's for a lot of Florida kids to see. Plenty of time will tell.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Good comments from Elijah Judy earlier today. We'll probably have a little bit more time tomorrow for some of the players. Jeremiah Sirles, 10 minutes away. We'll talk with Papa Sirles, and then dive in with Matt Schick from ESPNU, Sirius XM satellite, and, of course, Schick and Nick podcast with Hurrdat Sports. Reminder to get buckled up. Driving is a full-time job. Phones, food, and friends need your attention when you're not driving. Stop the distraction. Just drive. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. But with a little bit more to Mitch Sherman's point, joined us at 425. Mitch talked about Judy and how he's reconstructed his body. You've heard that about Gatula. You hear that about a number of guys, and that is really sign one of buy-in. All right, you buy into the nutrition, the rest, the management. Is this a hobby or is it a job for you? And it's now a job for Judy, a dude that had all the accolades out of high school, went to A&M, stayed at Nebraska. And a couple of quotes here from Elijah Judy says, look, at first, the defensive line could be a 10-man pass rush rotation, and the D-line and the ability to get after the quarterback, stop the run, he anticipates it to be another level. He's seen a lot of football at Nebraska, at A&M, SEC, Big Ten, and the thing that he likes, too, was just his buy-in, and it really motivated him. Just the little time he saw and the work he got with Coach Knighton really maybe sparked his interest in football. And I know there was things that have been mentioned here with Judy and having a child. That's stressful. That's stressful when you're 28, let alone early 20s as a college student. So right now, Judy's a dude that is good enough to start and is considered a starter. But there's big things for him, super talent. You want to see him have that breakout senior season.
I think that's an interesting piece of discussion here that sometimes gets overlooked is like there's more to football players than just kind of the nameless, faceless athlete you see on the field. And I think that's what Matt Rhule is so good about when you compare it to other staffs that have been at Nebraska is diving into that person. Because like for a lot of these guys, you're playing football in college because you were good at it in high school. And there was some love from it growing up, but like there's a different level of dedication that's required in college. Do you play football because you're good at it, or do you play football because it's what you love and it's what you want to do with your life? And I think there's a big distinction there. And you kind of heard it with Jamari Butler in the Chasing 3 episode a couple weeks ago, where it was like, yeah, like you can help your family by going back down to Alabama and helping them out, or you can help them out by becoming the best version of yourself as a football player, by really diving in, dedicating yourself, and becoming the best at what you are already good at. Make a career out of it. It's interesting, and I think it gets kind of swept under the rug sometimes that like there's so much more going on in these players' lives. That's what I've loved about Chasing 3 is like you get to take a peek behind the curtain. It's not just the guy you talk to whenever he's in front of the media. It's not just the guy you see on Saturdays. There's a story behind every single athlete on that field, and I think Matt Rhule, his coaching staff really emphasize getting to know the player, getting to know the person before you get to know the football player.
Dude, you want to really connect with somebody, it is relationship driven, and if there's genuine care, they're gonna sell out for you in a great way. And that's really the rock of this program if you're a Nebraska fan. Jeremiah Sirles on the way. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Our favorite Husker NFLer, Jeremiah Sirles, with us at Sirles71_HSKR. I about said at Papa Sirles. If you're watching on the stream, that's how he's tagging himself. Sirles, those goggles never get old. You got rocking, man. You didn't wear them as a player, but you wear them in front of the podcast world.
Dude, as much film as I watch and as much as I stare at this freaking computer screen all day, I was getting horrible headaches, and so I was like, screw it, I'm going for it, and they have made a world of difference in my life.
You kind of look like an Eastern Bloc Bond villain with them on.
I could take that. I also did. I had a person, a former agent, tell me, he's like, hey, you should wear some glasses because it'll make you look older, so people think you're not so young in the profession. I was like, oh, all right, that works too. So it's a little bit of both.
Is that the beard too? That's like what Abe Lincoln did. Is Abe Lincoln grew the beard to make himself look older and more distinguished?
I grow the beard so you can't see how fat my face is.
I think Abe might have had an acne problem as a youth as well. That might have been Abe's issue, but
yeah.
Who knows? But Sirles, will stick with the issues part and reaction to Teddy going down.
Yeah, man. I mean, I feel horrible for the kid. You know, that's one of those things where you're just rooting for that guy to just, I remember I was like, just make it through spring. I was like, oh, he made it through spring. Right. And now it's like, okay, just get to week 1. And, you know, he's been through so much. I think this is his 3rd ACL. He already had the double shoulder harness braces on. I mean, he was already the Tin Man put together with duct tape. And so first of all, I just feel terrible for him as a player. I mean, I hope that he can recover from this. I don't know if he comes back to football or not. I wouldn't blame him one iota if he didn't, you know, but now you start looking at it. Okay, Teddy's gone. What's now? And I think it's got to be Turner Corcoran, right? You got to turn back to the vet that has played left tackle for you a lot, been battle tested, has some things he needs to get cleaned up. He's also coming off the foot injury, right? So, I mean, there's some question marks there at the left tackle position, which is just really unfortunate when we really were hoping for Teddy to be the guy in there.
I want to ask you about injuries because Turner's battled them. Teddy's battled them. They're both giants. You're also super tall. What's too tall for offensive line?
No, I don't think – I've had a couple of people to ask me, like, is he just too tall? You know, I don't think it's a matter of being too tall as much as just it's a violent position. It's a violent game. Right. I mean, my best friend, Alex Boone, 37 years old, just had his knee replaced last week. Yeah. Right. He played 10 years in the NFL. Right. I mean, I'm going to need my knee replaced by the time I'm 40. I had an ACL when I was 17 years old. Like, it just comes with the territory of being an offensive lineman. And if you can get through college without being scathed, hats off to you, man. Right. But so many of the times it's just you're trying to train your body to, can I be as big and strong and tight as possible? And then can I run myself into another guy that's done the exact same thing over and over again, multiple times a game, multiple times a practice until one of us quit, right? Or one of our bodies quit on themselves, right? I mean, which is what happened to me in the NFL, right? My ankle was like, listen, bud, you've rolled me enough times now. I'm just going to explode on you. And that was the end of it, right? I've had 2 shoulder surgeries. I got 22 anchors in my body, 11 on each side, right? It just is a part of the body, and it's just a part of playing the game of football. Is injuries happen, and there's really no rhyme or reason. You know, I think the only injury that I can truly say is preventable is some soft tissue stuff, right? Hamstring, groin, quad, that type of stuff. Because a lot of that is, hey, are you recovering well? Are you eating properly? Are you hydrating properly? But the ligament stuff, sometimes it just happens.
We've seen it featured a couple times in Chasing 3 guys coming back from injury, Sirles, with just the violence and all the injuries that naturally occur within football. What kept you coming back? Why football?
Because I loved it, dude. I mean, I tell my wife all the time, like, I would die on a football field if I could, right? If I could still do it from a physical standpoint, I would still try and do it, right? And it's just, there's nowhere else in the world that I can literally go physically assault a person and not get in trouble for it, right? Like, if I had a tough day, well, that's unfortunate. I'm just going to hit this dude in front of me as many times as possible, right? And there's just something about the ability to put yourself in the arena and just be like, we're going to fight. We're going to fight, and may the best man win. And I've trained, I've done all of this, and it was a really hard thing for me when I left the NFL of what's the next outlet. Like, I need something like that. And like, weightlifting is great, but like, what am I training for? And all that stuff. And it just keeps you coming back because you got to love it. If you don't love it, your first injury, you're never going to come back.
And now you beat up NFL teams at the negotiating table?
Yeah, and now I get to go. Well, it's part of the reason why I still go train with the boys, right? Like the guys that I sign, I go up to the gym and I hold the pads and I run into them and I'm doing all this stuff because it's so much fun. It's just so much fun.
Jeremiah Sirles, full service agent.
Oh, yeah.
He'll sign you and then he'll beat the hell out of you.
Yeah. Welcome to the agency, boys.
So as we get back into offensive line play here, we briefly mentioned Turner. There's also Gunnar Gatula. And a lot of people say you make your biggest jump in college between your freshman and your sophomore year. That's where he's at, going into his redshirt freshman year, technically. If he's able to make a jump and put himself in contention to fight for that starting left tackle spot, I mean, we've talked about your experience with Von Miller at Texas A&M, your redshirt freshman year. What difficulties does he face if he is going to be a guy that wants to compete for playing time?
Yeah, you know, it's a hard thing. I was lucky enough going into my redshirt freshman year that I got all the 1 reps through spring. I got all the 1 reps through fall camp. Like, I was kind of the penciled in starter the entire time. Now I had to go earn it and beat out guys like Mike Smith and go beat out guys like Marcel Jones and those type of things. But I at least was getting those 1 reps against guys like Barry Turner and Pierre Allen and Jared Crick, right? Gunnar has been running with the 2s, right? And he's been running, and now all of a sudden, if he's going to compete for that spot, the jump from the 2s to the 1s may not seem like a lot, but it's a big time difference, even in practice, like let alone going to the games. And so number 1, physically, is he ready? Right? Physically, from a strength standpoint, from a speed standpoint, from a size standpoint, is he ready to stand up to a 12-game meat grinder season in the Big Ten? Right? So that's step number 1. Step number 2, mentally, is he ready? Has he put the time in this offseason? And again, I'm not knocking because I don't know the answer to this, but if you're not going into the season as I'm the starter, did you put the time in the offseason as I want to be the starter? Knowing the playbook, knowing the ins and outs, knowing the checks, knowing my job, all of that comes into it, because left tackle is a very important position. And if I can't trust that you're going to go out there and at least know what to do, then I can't put you out there, right? And I think that's where you start giving the nod a little bit more to Turner of, at least I know you can do it. I've seen you do it, right? But now it's a question of, is Gunnar ready there, or is there still a pretty big gap between Gunnar and Turner?
What do you anticipate a breakthrough year looking like for Turner Corcoran?
Yeah, I think for him, it has to be more consistency. There was times where Turner looks really good, and then there's times where it's like the entire game, it felt like it was off the rails a little bit, right? And I've said this for a long time. The number 1 compliment you can give to an offensive lineman is like, man, that guy's consistent, right? If you can just be like, consistency, right? From a week in, week out basis, I know exactly what I'm going to get when this dude steps out on the field, which is exactly what Bryce Benhart did last year, right? I mean, I thought Bryce had his best year of football ever last year, because consistently, week in and week out, like, he still got beat at times, but he was doing things the right way, right? And I feel like with Turner, if he wants to have that kind of year, then he needs to come out of the gate well, right? And then consistently grow on that and not have those kind of drop-off quarters or drop-off series where it's 3 or 4 series in a row where he's getting beat.
Is it a confidence thing? And I don't know how well you know him or not, but is it a confidence thing, or is it just more honing technique?
First of all, offensive line is all confidence, right? If you break the huddle and you walk up to the line with, man, I hope I don't get beat, you've already lost. Like, the rep is already over. The game is already over. You're in for a long day. So you have to have full confidence of, hey, I know that I can beat this dude up. Right. And then it goes back into making sure I'm doing my technique the right way, making sure I'm playing within the protection, or I'm playing within the run scheme, not going rogue, trying to do my own thing. Right. And I thought, Coach Rhule's comment or the quote the other day of, like, you don't change your jump shot when the game's on the line. I can't think of a better analogy, right? Of, hey, you did it all week in practice, just because the lights are on now, like, don't go rogue. Right? Trust it. But confidence is the number 1 thing in an offensive lineman of winning a rep or not.
Where does that confidence come from in your mind? When you talked about some of the guys that you went up against at practice, I'm sure that helps whenever you look at Pierre Allen and say, well, I'm not going to play a guy who's better than this all season long. Is that where the confidence comes from? Is it through those warm-up games? We've talked about Nebraska's inability to win week 1 on the show yesterday, the fact that it's been 5 seasons. Does it come in there, the fact that you lay a beat down on UTEP and some confidence grows? Where does that confidence come from in your mind?
Yeah, it starts in the weight room, right? It starts with in the weight room of, like, I've done everything this offseason to prepare myself that I'm physically as capable as ever to go out and do this, right? And then it comes with practice, right? In practice, dominating the guys that I should dominate, right? If we're running scout team and I got a freshman across from me, like, that dude shouldn't piss a drop, right? Like, I should be on that dude like white on rice, right? He can't do anything. He can't pass rush. He can't run defend. I'm throwing this dude around. And then when I get to my one-on-one, my good on good, I'm competing my tail off, right? I'm maybe not going to every rep, but I'm going to be competition-wise with this dude. It's going to be a back and forth, and we're going to make each other better, right? And then you start winning more of those and gaining more confidence and doing more things right. And then that leads into those quote-unquote warm-up games where if you can go out there and you're going against UTEP and you're like, listen, dude, I play at Nebraska, you play at UTEP. That's unfortunate for you. I'm going to let you know why I'm here and you're there. right? And you beat up on those guys a little bit more, then that grows even more confidence, because then you go play against the Ohio States, and you go play against the Michigans, and you're like, yeah, you might be Michigan, but guess what? I'm at Nebraska, so let's do this, right? And then you just have that all-out war back and forth between you on the game within the game, the one-on-one rep, and you start winning more of those. That's where the confidence comes from. But you start losing more of those than you win, that's when the confidence really starts to slip.
Jeremiah Sirles with us. Couple more minutes. It's Hail Varsity Radio at Sirles71_HSKR. Papa Sirles, longtime standout with the Big Red and NFL vet. Sirles, we've hit consistency. We've hit confidence. I want to hit that practice prep part of things for Nebraska. And as good as this defense was a year ago, you expect the jump this year. The offensive line is seeing what day in, day out? How good is this defense prepping the Nebraska offensive line for 2024?
Yeah, I think from a mental standpoint, this defense is keeping this offense on their toes every single day, right? I mean, I remember watching some of Tony White's schemes and games last year going, how do you even prepare for this? Like, how do you even on a week long to prepare for this defense of guys running everywhere, do you get a chance? So mentally, they should be very sharp. Right, they should be very sharp at being able to see things, pick things up. Because when you go play Iowa and they're a 4-3 defense, you're like, oh, they're just going to line up here, sweet, right? Like they're not moving everywhere. But from a talent standpoint, you talk about Ty Robinson, you talk about Cam Lenhart, right? You talk about Nash Hutmaker, those guys that are in there just continuing to get better and better and better. Like that goes back to what I was saying earlier: the iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another. Like you start having those dudes going after it, it's just going to be better for everyone involved.
Jeremiah Sirles with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Sirles, what kind of tricks do you think Tony White's going to have up his sleeve this season? I know you don't have as much time anymore to dive into the Husker schemes and the teams and go down and check out scrimmage, especially when Matt Rhule closes it down. But you're a guy who's played some high-level football. Do you think Tony White's going to have some tricks up his sleeve this year? Because you look at a game, Week 2, Colorado, Tony White pulled out a lot of tricks, especially in the first half against Colorado. Is he going to have more up his sleeve?
Yeah, I think he's going to have a lot more up his sleeve this year just because he's got a lot more guys. It's not year one of his defense, right? We talk about it. When you get a new coaching staff that comes in, all of spring ball and all of fall camp is really just installing, right? Like, hey, this is our philosophy. This is what we want to do. This is the check when we get cover 1. This is the check when we get cover 2. This is the check when they motion, right? Like just getting your foundation laid. When you go into year 2, and especially when you bring a lot of starters back or a lot of guys that played a lot in that defense, you're now not as worried about as much the installation as much of the, hey, what are the counter punches, right? What are the counter punches of, hey, they line up like this, here's what our check is, but if we really want to try and attack them, let's try and get to this, right? Or, hey, let's move to this. Or, hey, I've recognized this within the defense and I can pull the trigger that much faster and get downhill, right? And so I think Tony White is going to be really comfortable with those front 7 guys, right? There's a little bit of change in the back end. But I think those front 7 guys, especially the defensive line, he's going to cut those dudes loose and let them just play really free.
Sirles, will get you out. Let's talk about Adrian and the preseason game with the Jets. Pretty impressive work by Adrian. Looked super comfortable. Tell me a little bit about his fit in that New York offense. Still a lot of football to go, I realize, but he looks as good as he did this spring, but now his second rodeo in the NFL.
Yeah, I think something that goes unsung is the fact that Adrian's only been in that building for like 12 days, right? I mean, that dude, he wasn't there at the start of camp. He had to work out week 1 of camp. They came in, they signed him, and the way that he was able to go out there and execute and push the ball down the field. So many times I watched a ton of preseason football. I mean, I'm so happy football's back. I just was glued to the TV all weekend. Like, you start getting into the third and fourth quarter of these games, and these quarterbacks are getting nervous in the service, getting antsy, and it's checkdowns, and it's not pushing the ball down the field, or if they do, it's getting intercepted. And, Adrian just played with such confidence in his ability to roll out of the pocket on the run and deliver a strike, or use his legs and showcase his ability and his command. And, you talk about learning from guys like Aaron Rodgers and Tyrod Taylor, who've been in the league and played a ton of football. And, just knowing Adrian and the type of guy and the type of player he's just being a sponge, right? And he knows that he's got to go out and earn it every single week. I think he matured a lot through the UFL, and then he put everything he can do. All you can do from a preseason basis, you can't count the numbers in the room. You can't count, are they keeping this, how many, is you can control when you get that snap and what you do with it. And I thought he did a phenomenal job week 1.
Sirles will get caught up again closer to kickoff. Follow Jeremiah on Twitter at Sirles71_HSKR, our favorite Husker NFLer agent, Papa Sirles. Sirles, be good. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely appreciate you guys. Go Big Red.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Let's say hi to Matt Schick, ESPN Radio, Sirius XM, ESPNU, and yes, the Schick and Nick Show. Schick, it's another live show, man. You and Nick Baugh, the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, that's happening next week. I mean, how many bouncers have you hired for that thing?
Well, assuming you can show up, one. And that's kind of where we're at. I mean, this is going to be the third year running here, doing this live show. I got my flight booked. We're going to be in there, flying in Sunday night, doing the show. I don't know why people want to come out and listen and watch and do this stuff, but we are grateful. We are grateful for it. We have tricked everyone into thinking that we are somewhat worthy of taking a couple of hours out of your day to come watch. But yes, the Hurrdat Sports Bar coming up next week, Monday, 6 o'clock. Probably run about an hour and a half or so. We'll have some fun. We'll sing some songs. We'll listen to some songs. We'll laugh. We'll cry. And then the show will start. And so that's a lot.
Awesome, man. That is going to be so good. And just the fandom and crowd. You're honestly modest, but in all seriousness, I mean, it's a line out the door, brother. It's really cool. I mean, it's beloved, and it should be. So get out there if you haven't. I don't know how many seats are available, but get your reservations now with the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill for Mr. Schick, Mr. Baugh, and the Schick and Nick Show coming up 6 o'clock the 19th. So that is going to be outstanding. So there's a lot to get into. We're creeping closer to college football, 18 days. And I got to get your reaction. You've worked with Coach Prime. You cover Coach Prime last week and his thoughts on a certain three-letter network.
Yes. For once, if people aren't throwing stones at ESPN, it's the ever torturous CBS Sports that is taking the. I mean, if you had a nickel for every time, it's Coach Prime. I like coaches that are different. He's certainly different. There's a lot of media out there that like to grovel and be fearful of access, though, and there are some that don't play the game. And there's a writer for the Denver Post who's been critical. He's written some good things and bad things about sports. But Deion didn't like what he wrote, and so he kind of went toe-to-toe with him. And then, of course, you have him not wanting to answer a question about CBS from CBS, the local CBS affiliate, because CBS Sports wrote something about him and about his son or something he didn't like. And he's not differentiating. If you have CBS in the network name, even if you're the local CBS, you're taking some slings and arrows. The irony of it is the guy who's asking the question is a Colorado alum from the CBS affiliate. So, I think it's a little misplaced animosity, but Prime beats to his own drum. And it wasn't a great look, but at the same time, he's the kind of guy who's not going to take anything from anybody. And again, after a month last year was I told you so, and now we're just kind of waiting as Colorado alumni, and I say we. I know you guys are Buff fans as well, just trying to see what's going to happen this year.
Matt, I think it's pretty incredible that you have a coach from the state of Colorado mad at a local sports columnist, and that sports columnist isn't Woody Page.
Yeah, Woody Page is not ruffling the feathers there as much as he used to anymore. But yes, Mr. Keeler there with the Post. It's the coaches versus reporters is a tale as old as time, and it's good entertainment. That's why we like Coach Prime. He's good entertainment, and he's going to read something, and coaches who say they don't care what you write or what you think or what you say on TV, we all know that's a lie, and Coach Prime is evidence of that, saying he's not going to take it, whatever you write. If you want to ask a football question, that's fine, but let's hash it out and figure out why you hate me so much before I give you a good answer.
Well, how do you think his team's going to respond to this, dare I say, drama ahead of the season? You got North Dakota State that kicks off the trip to Lincoln, the Big 12 slate. Colorado does what this season, and they have a chance to make a jump in year two. But it's been a unique process with the transfers and the additions.
Yeah, they've done a lot of overhauling in the transfer market. Again, I'm not big on bringing in transfers to shore up lines of scrimmage, especially the offensive line. These are things that you want to make sure have continuity year over year, and that's where a guy like Matt Rhule is probably going to have an advantage in the long run over a guy like Deion Sanders, who's probably trying to go on a year-to-year basis. Looking at the schedule, this to me feels like another 4 to 5 win season. They really need to go to a bowl game. Nebraska is kind of like we're going to go to a bowl game. That's almost an afterthought for this year for a program that hasn't been in 8 years. They're thinking 7 wins, 8 wins, 6 wins is kind of how you pass that on the exit. It's an exit ramp on your way to a further destination. For Colorado, that's kind of the end game here. And you've got 5 ranked teams on the schedule. Can you start 2-1 after 3 games? That's really mandatory for Colorado. I don't know the answer to that. I'm thinking they finish 5-7. It's kind of where I think this team will finish. I don't know what Cincinnati looks like. I don't know how Arizona's going to do with a new head coach. They were great at the end of last year. They win 9 games. Things are great. Kansas, can their quarterback stay healthy? There's a lot of interest. I just hope the interest in Colorado from an alum's point of view lasts past September this year. That's the goal.
Well, let's say Colorado exceeds expectations. Matt, what does that look like in your eyes? How do they do it?
Well, they have to win at Nebraska. That would be exceeding expectations. They need to take home games against either Kansas State or Utah. And how does that look? It looks, frankly, by outscoring teams, putting up 35 points a game, having Shedeur Sanders go and win you a game or two, having Travis Hunter not get hurt for half of the season or not be less than 100% for half the season. He needs to be full go every single game. He is one of the top 2 or 3 reasons that this team is going to be good or can be good this season. So I think it comes down to that. And can this offensive line prevent Shedeur Sanders from living most of the season on his back? Those are the kind of the checklist things that are going to be things they're going to have to figure out. And if they don't, then this could really unravel quickly here this season because, the Nebraska game's tough, but they've got 5 ranked opponents in their last 7 games. And one of their other non-ranked teams is on the road in Lubbock where no one goes in and wins. So no matter how bad they are. So there's a lot of uncertainty this year, and I don't know if Deion's in it for the long haul. I hope he is. I think he's the kind of coach, guys, that if he would actually invest, instead of 25%, invest 75% in high school recruiting, I think he could go into living rooms and win a lot of kids over and build from the ground up. I just don't know in this day and age if that's something he's willing to do.
From a Nebraska standpoint, UTEP's 18 days away. Then it's Colorado, night game, recruiting, win on the field. That's a statement opportunity, Schick, for the Big Red because of the prime persona, the rivalry that's embedded. But the fan base loves Matt Rhule, likes what he's doing. But, man, the payoff with momentum and belief to see it happen would be big. I mean, it's going to be a monster opportunity for both squads, but really, I mean, Nebraska getting Colorado at home at night, you really can't ask for much more from a launching point.
Yeah, Colorado would like that win. Nebraska needs that win. That's a big differentiator between those 2 programs. Nebraska's schedule is set up for 8 wins. There's no way you can argue otherwise. It's set up for 8 wins. It's an 8-win campaign. that's kind of the floor. I don't know that it's the ceiling, but I think it's what the reasonable expectation should be. And for a team that hasn't made a bowl game in 8 years, that's a big statement to make. But when you're not leaving home until the last weekend of September, when you've got 7 winnable games out of the chute, when Matt Rhule has shown that he can be a turnaround program guy within 2 years, he set the groundwork for this. The big question is Dylan Raiola who we believe he can be, and can this team win close games and stop turning the ball over? Those are the questions they have to answer, and I really think if those are still question marks after the first month, then you start not reaching for the panic button, but maybe just locating it, wanting its GPS tracker on to see where it is, because of the PTSD that you've been going through there as a fan base. But you couldn't ask for a much better schedule in the Big Ten, especially without divisions. You only draw Ohio State. You don't have Michigan. You don't have Oregon. Like this is shaping up. You got a UCLA team that is still trying to find itself, a USC team that has a new defensive coordinator, an Iowa team that couldn't cross the 50-yard line last year. You've got opportunities here to get 8 or 9 wins. It's baby steps, but that Colorado game is going to be either a real heavy speed bump that kind of makes you have to bring the car to the shop, or it's just going to be a springboard to the season that the Husker fans have been waiting for a decade.
Well, Matt, I like the point you brought up there. If Nebraska is still losing close games, still turning the football over in the first month of the season, are you reaching for the panic button? Are you reaching for the voodoo doll? Are you reaching for the bottle? What are you reaching for?
Yeah, I don't know. I would make sure that sharp objects are not around you anytime soon, or in the first month if that were to happen. Like you're probably, at that point you're wondering, okay, let's just say, for instance, Nebraska stubs its toe, has a late turnover. Instead of starting 4-0, they're 2-2, some way, somehow, or even 3-1, and then you go into West Lafayette and lose that game. Mm-hmm. You're starting to wonder, okay, not where this is going, but why us? Because I don't think anyone, even if, let's say they squeak into a bowl at 6-6 and are still turning the ball over, I don't think people are going to be doubting Matt Rhule. It's almost like they're doubting the DNA of the program rather than doubting the head coach who has a track record of turning things around like this. So that's where I come out on this. Things would have to be really, really bad for the panic button to be hit on the program as a whole, or as the coaching staff as a whole. But I understand Nebraska fans waiting for the other shoe to drop, because that's where they've been living for the better part of the last decade.
Some overtime coming up with Matt Schick. It's Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Few minutes, Matt Schick with us. Hail Varsity Radio, Schick and Nick Show, Sirius XM, ESPNU, and at ESPN_Schick is where you follow him on Twitter. Schick, you do a great job covering recruiting with ESPNU. Nebraska still in the conversation for a couple of 5-stars. David Sanders Jr. Down the road from you, the top offensive tackle, makes his announcement Saturday. Sounds like Rocky Top, but Nebraska's still in that logo, at least. The top 3, Michael Terry, the third from San Antonio, phenomenal athlete, still considering Nebraska, Texas, a fight for the Big Red in that. But what's it say to you about Nebraska in the conversation with some of these 4- and 5-star dudes, despite being 5-7 and, proof pending this 2024 season?
It tells me the same things that people are willing to spend $25 on a practice where they haven't been to a bowl game in 8 years, coming off a 5-7 season. Like, the interest is there, the passion is there, people want it to win, the infrastructure is there, the recruiting support, the NIL, it's all pointed in the same direction, and that same direction is a positive one. So, the whole notion of, you've got, and you were mentioning it, David Sanders, top verbally uncommitted prospect in the ESPN 300 from Providence Day, right down the road, ballyhooed prospect. They treated him like a king there. They're doing everything they can to get these guys. It's like This isn't like when Jaleel Okafor went to campus to visit Tim Miles, in Nebraska on an unofficial, 10 years ago.
Bring your friends. We know you ain't coming.
Hey, who do you know, and who can you bring to check out our new complex? We're building things under Tim Miles. Yeah, that was more of like a fool's gold. This is actually some tangible evidence that things are good. And look, it doesn't just show the power of Nebraska. In a lot of ways, it shows the power of Dylan Raiola, where if you get the quarterback, you can get a lot more than that. And a great quarterback will draw great players because that's where the sport starts. And so we'll see what happens. It's unlikely, but they've given themselves an opportunity, and that's all you can hope for.
Does Nebraska need to recruit with the big dogs, Matt, in your opinion, to reclaim national relevancy? That's been a story. If you want to make the college football playoff, your team needs to have a couple of seasons in the top 10 in the recruiting rankings, or at least right around there. Michigan kind of being the one exception where they were always hanging between 8 and 15. Does Nebraska need to recruit with the big dogs in your eyes?
No, I don't think so. I think in the 4-team playoff, if you want to win a national championship, yes. In a 12-team playoff where you're just trying to get in, no. Look, I've been on record saying that Nebraska is not going to win another national championship in my lifetime, but that's not a far-reaching, outlandish statement. Look at the programs that have won it, and look at the footprint that they're in, and look at the infrastructure that they have. It's just a little bit different. But if you want to get into a 12-team playoff, I think averaging top 25, top 20 classes, maybe a breakthrough with a top 10 class every now and then. But you do need a dude. You need a couple of dudes on each side of the ball. And it feels like they're getting closer to that. Again, difference between winning a national championship and getting into the playoff is a chasm now that it's a 12-teamer. You're going to have teams that, are – the other conferences, you're going to have a team that finishes, 17th or 22nd nationally in the AP poll or in the playoff rankings. And they're going to get into the playoff because of conference affiliation and because of the rules with the 12-teamer and being one of the highest-ranked conference champs. So it's a little bit different being in the Big Ten. 10-2 is the bar. You have to finish 10-2 to get in that large out of the Big Ten. That's how I view it. And if you want to do that, I think top 20 classes are fairly legitimate. And I think Nebraska's on pace for that.
SEC, what gets you in? What's the record?
Oh, I think at 9-3 might be able to do it. People are asking who's the top 10 team that will fall unranked and finish the season unranked, because it's only happened 3 out of the last 26 seasons that a top 10, if you started in the top 10, you finished ranked. Everyone did. So 23 out of the last 26, it hasn't happened. You're trying to find a team, and someone was asking me, what about Ole Miss? I was like, look, everyone loves them some SEC. It's hard to imagine them even dropping, even if they're 8-4, that they're not ranked. Mm-hmm. So, I think there's opportunity there for this conference to get 4 in. There's just a lot of love for the league, and rightfully so. I think Ole Miss is kind of one of those linchpin teams. I think Texas A&M. Mike Elko can bounce this team back. He helped turn Duke into a semi-football school after Coach K left, and that says something to me. He can coach in the lines of scrimmage, so I think A&M could be a team that sneaks through. They're also a team that was top 10 and finished unranked in years past. So it's a tough schedule. It's a tough grind, but then again, aren't they all? So people love that conference, and they're always going to get the benefit of the doubt.
Schick, I want to ask the fool's gold question, and who is the fool's gold of the top 25?
You mean a team that is ranked in the top 25 but isn't as good? It's going
to be a disappointing year. They start out with a number next to their name, and they may barely be bowling.
Number next to the name and barely be bowling, I would look at a team like a Kansas with quarterback health.
Okay.
I would look at a team like USC if their defense isn't all together. And I would frankly, the barely be bowling is a tough one for me, but okay. I would say with all of the newness at Oklahoma, I mean, it used to be, and Pete Thamel brought up this point, you play Texas, and that's kind of like your big game for the year, and you're not really tested elsewhere in the Big 12. Not to say you're not going to lose elsewhere in the Big 12, but now you're in the SEC, and your games leading up to that game are home against Tennessee and at Auburn, where dreams go to die. So, it's going to be a different – and then you go to Ole Miss, and then you go to Missouri at the end of the year. You've got Alabama at home. You're at LSU. Like, does that look like a 9-3 season with Jackson Arnold, a new quarterback, on board? It doesn't to me. That team looks like it could finish 8-4, 7-5. So I'd probably peg in Oklahoma.
OU's in danger. Missouri's somebody that's hot. They've been bringing in lots of talent. They're riding some momentum.
How about USC?
Well, SC, is mentioned, and yeah, I mean, it's kind of a big year for Old Lincoln.
I mean, they got a tough schedule. They're joining a new conference. You might have to do a bit of a stylistic switch with your defense. I mean, you bring in a new defensive coordinator.
Week to week, meat grinder, have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Danton Lynn with coming over from UCLA. I mean, he's kind of done this before. He's beefed up his lines. We'll see how quickly they can do it. They're over under 7.5. Part of me wonders if they're a little undervalued, and part of me wonders, I don't really know how good Miller Moss is. I saw him against Louisville in the bowl game. We'll see. But they can't be worse defensively. Zachariah Branch, can he stay healthy? A lot of those qualifiers need to be put on that. But, yeah, the newness is something you cannot quantify when you're trying to predict these teams in these new leagues.
Matt Schick with ESPNU, Sirius XM, ESPN Radio. The Schick and Nick Show. Get to the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill Monday, the 19th, 6 o'clock live pod with Mr. Schick, Mr. Baugh. Enjoy it. And, Matt, thanks for the time, and we'll check in again soon.
Yep, and make sure that you're profiling people. Make sure that they're behaving when you're bouncing folks for us at that event, okay?
I will do my best mean voice.
Thank you very much. See you guys.
Good stuff from Schick. Going to be awesome to have the fellas back in town for that live pod. Hurrdat Sports, Monday at 6, the 19th, so get there. Get that seat reserved. We'll wind down to Tuesday with Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, miss any part of the show, we invite you to check out the podcast platforms for Hail Varsity Radio, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Like and subscribe. Give us a rating, good, bad, ugly. We love the feedback. Hail Varsity YouTube, like and subscribe there. For the video portion, big thanks to Jeremiah Sirles. Sirles with us this hour. Matt Schick of ESPN, Sirius XM, Schick and Nick podcast. Just had a couple of segments with Schick. And then Mitch Sherman got us going. Mitch unleashed the fury. Mitch Sherman with The Athletic. Tomorrow's show loaded up. Mike Babcock, Evan Bland, head Husker baseball coach Will Bolt going to join us. So excited to talk with Coach Bolt. Congrats on the extension and the new hires. And Husker baseball doing their thing as they get ready for some fall ball stuff. And then we'll be into 2025 soon enough. So excited to talk with Will Bolt. He'll join us tomorrow on Hail Varsity Radio. So it took a while, but the proverbial first day of school pics are out on Mama's Facebook for Junior. It's his senior year. And today was the first day for seniors to report. And she did the then and now picture. So she found his first day of kindergarten picture where he was a cute little monkey. And he had for the first time and the last time in his life, had a collared shirt on.
You don't make him wear a collared shirt to the golf course?
Yeah, I guess you're right. Thank you for ruining the jab. But he had his Air Jordans on and he had his collared shirt and he had a couple of missing front teeth like he played goalie. And then you fast forward to now, and he looks like a dirty hippie. So, with a long baseball hair.
Has the senioritis kicked in just yet?
Absolutely not. He's hitting us up for more dinero with studying for the old
ACT,
SAT stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, as soon as you get the score you want on that's
he's either got a vicious gambling debt or he's hell bent on getting an Elijah Herbel ACT score.
Well, see, I got the score that I wanted like junior year, second half of junior
year.
Look at
you, so humble brag Elijah. I got a 34 when I was only 16.
No comment.
I'm right.
You're right, but like as soon as that happened, I went.
Do you want to take it again?
Yeah, we discussed doing that as a fantasy football punishment. I didn't want to ruin my legacy.
The old Sopranos episode, Christopher Moltisanti taking his SEC Securities and Exchange entrance exams, his boards. The guy did not look like Christopher Moltisanti in that episode of The Sopranos.
That's the same thing that happened. You've seen the show Suits?
Yes.
That's what the guy does for a living.
Right, that's the first episode.
Yeah.
Then he's...
Well, I pray Junior hasn't employed that method.
No, it's either dude's been on a cold streak with the old baseball parlay, I kind of kid, or he's serious about getting that initial score up because, we're a year away from college, and then if he does his job, maybe some medical school.
Well, the thing is
no pressure.
Once you get that score you want, or at least close to what you want, that's when the senioritis really kicks in. Because you go, who cares now? Got a great ACT score, my GPA. Well, I can't hurt it that bad here senior year. I'll take a couple classes, pass, fail. That's when it really kicks in. I'm just warning you now.
The stuff he's signed up for is all that AP stuff that I knew friends that were in it, but I never got to go in that room.
My advice to him: drop it. I'm kidding.
Don't listen to Uncle Elijah.
I ended up in radio.
Right. He just shakes his head. Back tomorrow at 4. Thanks for tuning in to Hail Varsity.